words that you all put together. So this is called a wordle. Basically, it shows an accounting of which words were emphasized. And we've got about, say, maybe a third of all your words together. We'll continue on during the break, but to put them up, but some of the words are responsibility. That's a key one. You can see the bottom right, it's got its own space there. Stewardship, honesty, accountability, integrity, truth, knowledge, connectedness, protection. So in this section of our conference, we will move to hearing 4 different perspectives on the impacts of hydraulic fracturing. And just to briefly introduce the panel, we have David Morris, who's representing Quicksilver Resources, Fiona Lordson, who's a farmer from Rosebud, Alberta, and Sean and Laura Campbell, who are renters out of Canada. So first we'll hear from David Morris, who's Community Relations with Quicksilver Resources. He's worked in the oil and gas industry for many, many years, including a number of years with the ERCB, advocating on behalf of landowners. And his current position is with Quicksilver Resources as the Community Relations person. So please join me in welcoming David Morris.
Well, thank you very much for Don, and the rest of the conference organizers. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. I've really enjoyed the conversations and also the presentations that I've listened to last night and this morning as well. And I hope that I can provide you with some other perspectives. As I'm getting my screen up here, as I said a bit about my own experience, I've spent many years in the oil and gas industry in one capacity or another. I had the privilege of working with ERCB, was the AEUB, and I say that with some degree of apprehension sometimes, because I know some people have some strong feelings about trust issues with regulators or government in general. I'm going to speak to that in just a couple of seconds. I was just sharing some tips with some of the other panel members who are working these things. Sometimes you gotta set them up and just go left, right, not try to make it too complicated. So, as I said, I've had the privilege of working with the regulators to some degree and in various capacities. I also had the privilege of assisting a landowner advocate for a year or so, and got some perspectives from those individuals and groups. And now I'm sort of other side of the fence, the third side, working for a company, Quicksilver Resources Canada. So, in fact, in terms of the regulatory process hearings, I've assisted ERC hearing some of those processes. I was involved with some as a landowner advocate. And they got cross-examined as a member of Quicksilver's Community Relations Department. So, I think it's interesting how that has gone. This is my presentation. First, I won't spend too much time on the first one. Nor really, I think the most important So I'll just begin here. Who is QRCI, Quicksilver Resources Canada? We're an energy and exploration production company focused on natural gas. Our head office is in Calgary, we've got about 90 Canadian employees, so we used to have quite a few more than that. Widely recognized, our company is a leader in the development of unconventional gas reserves such as deep shale gas in BC and coal bed methane in Alberta. We're a subsidiary of QRI, Quicksilver Resources, based in Fort Worth, Texas. We've been active in Canada for over 10 years. In fact, we used to be called NGV, Energy, because we are a subsidiary of QRI again. So the company's morphed a little bit, but we've not been bought and sold that in the same way. I showed up with a different hat one time, with a Quicksilver hat, and NGV, and I said, oh, I suppose this company's sold itself, and that's not been the case in ours, but it certainly is in many others. We've got a profile that includes about 1,700 wells drilled to date, primarily CBM, and our operations in Horn River includes about a dozen deep gas, shale gas to date. We've got some more planned for the future. There's a picture of our Alberta profile. You can see that we're primarily focused on Horseshoe Canyon. That's that particular resource play. And we've also, to date now, operated about 17 sweet gas compressor stations. And they're primarily, all our developments, of course, east of Highway 2. That seems to be where the economic pays that we bought. And just moving on, there's a bit of a snapshot just in Canada again to show you both provinces and proximically where things are related to each other. That's off about section 1. In our section 2 here, I've heard a lot of things about hydraulic fracturing, and just in terms of the outline, clearly I want to talk about water use as well, because they're very much joined connected to it. For water use of fracturing, we have shallow fracturing, and we've heard some concerns and some needed oversight there from Dr. Leckie and Dr. Muhlbach. But we don't really use that much water. We only use it to drill wells, whether you get it from dugouts or so on, and then being in land spreads some of it, we're trying to recycle it. But there's not a lot of water use in our CBM wells, of course. But in Alberta, much deeper fracturing, BC rather, much deeper fracturing, much higher water needs to drill and frack the wells. And just briefly, the history of the frack technologies, they are game changers. I want to touch base on the composition of frack fluids. I think both speakers did last night. Concerns and fears of the public, and that's for sure. That's why we're all here. And I'm very glad for Lauren's comments that I know is steering us in the right directions. And I'm going to look at other industries, because I think there's a tendency sometimes to look at industries in isolation. Everyone mentioned silos and things like that. I just want to try and, again, focus on the Lawrence about how we are all connected and have impacts that we need to be cognizant of. Our Alberta CBM, again, I'll just look at Alberta. We have strict well construction, drilling, and completion standards, and the requirements are enforced. Now, there's some debate about is that effective enough, and clearly it needs to be addressed and readdressed. I think cement, by its very nature, needs to be improved. You need to test it, you need to X-ray it, do sonic logs, whatever science can be brought to bear. CSER was kind enough to loan me their casing model here, and if you've got a minute to break, or you can perhaps come over and have a look just right up in real close about an actual crosscut to see the layers of cement and steel casing that is used to not only isolate the well bore and to get the production of surface, because it's a valuable economic product, but also to segregate or separate it from other zones and make sure it's done in a safe way. There's a number of other things about, I guess, arrows there. We don't fracture with anything but nitrogen here in Alberta. Obviously not in BC, and we have tried when we were looking at our fracturing operations. We wanted to model fracks. We did, pressures, tests, and frac propagation studies. Here's the dovetail, if you like, to the CSER model. And again, you've seen these on some other things. This is not really, it should be a standard throughout the world as far as I'm concerned. But in terms of the well, including a resource well, including a water well, it needs to be properly maintained, properly oversight, tested, at some degree over time. Anything that has an impact. There's a few words there about, listen, there's been thousands of field monitoring tests and frac jobs, and the sense is that in almost all the cases it's confirmed that this can be done safely. Not in all cases, and you've heard a few, whether we've got to keep catching up with some of the requirements because we have to revisit things. Here's one, for example, in Alberta. We did a frack propagation study. This is in our Ghost Pine area. And you can see that, again, you've got some similar, I guess, looks at a side view, just like this is it, of where the fracks go. And because you have this pressure, these are vertical fracks, of course, right there. And it's much shallower. You can see that we've got 400 meters, about just 1,300 feet at the bottom, much deeper in BC. But you can still see that the same principle applies. You need distances both in terms of the distances between a water well or an aquifer, and also some proper distances in terms of depth and in terms of what you're doing. And I think Dr. Winkelback and Dr. Leckie made references to, you need to, when you're fracking and putting pressures anywhere, you need, for every action there's an opposite reaction, and you need to be cognizant and monitor those. That's in, that's the cross-section. This is an overview. Those of you, I know there's a lot of people here from out of town. I think it's interesting. This is what the typical CDM well looks like on the left-hand side. It's not a big footprint after we're finished, a couple of coffee tables perhaps. And this is what it looks like from the air. And you say, gee, that doesn't seem very big. Well, we need more of them. Usually for, instead of just one in a very large area, we have to have, 2, 4, perhaps even as many 8 wells per section or per area to make it work. We don't really have that many, but that's the, these wells don't produce very much. In fact, often I've said, if Alberta and BC profiles for Quicksilver, if we were a baseball team, I think all our singles hitters would be in Alberta. These wells don't produce very much. And to make it economical work, you've got to steal a base, sacrifice and win 2, 3, and an extra innings just to make it work. And the gas prices have hurt us. 20% of our staff was let go a year or so ago. So you can be cognizant of that. Those are the singles hitters. Here's the home runs. This is in BC shale gas. You can see that it's got a much larger footprint. There's much larger water use needed. I'll give you some numbers now, just to throw it out there. I've talked with our drilling staff. You can say it's approximately 80,000 cubic meters per well that's needed to frack these. And our goal, hopefully within 4 or 5 years, is to use recycled water for all of our water wells. That's what Quicksilver's working for. Many companies are really far along. And the OGC, of course, regulates the BC shale gas area and all oil and gas development in BC, much like the ERCB development does here. So here's another picture of the natural gas from shale in BC. You've seen these pictures before, but it gives you an idea now of the different frac propagations because they're lateral, or pardon me, because you have a horizontal drilling direction, you can really get a lot more from the pay rather than just have smaller ones. These are much bigger ones. I'm just really switch about frac fluids here. And this is something I think both doctors use this. It is from CSRT. CAPS uses as well. You can see all these chemicals and additives and so on that are used to ensure that the operation can be successful. Most of it, by far, in the blue is sand and water. In fact, just in terms of comparison, I know there's a lot of additives that are very similar to what we would do in our homes. This is a tube of toothpaste. And it says here, I noticed that only use a pea-sized amount and with children under 6 and supervise them. Oh, okay, fine. How about another tube? Another tube of toothpaste. This one says, used for only children 10 or 12 years and older. Do not swallow, keep it away. So these are things that have a lot of these similar additives. I wonder if you opened your, your cabinet under your sink and you did the MSDS studies and you do all things, well, what kind of things are we having? I had the expression, our tolerance for risk and our oversight. Are we level? Do we apply these same standards to different industries? And my sense is we often don't, because myself included, we all have these inbred biases. In fact, I know the old commercials. I've got 3 children, and they're all, to some degree or another, working connected with the oil and gas industry as well, because it is a large economic driver. But But the expression when they were younger, it's 10 o'clock, do you know where your children are? I'd say, well, yeah, we do. I don't know, aren't they? But check. Well, it's 10 o'clock, do you know what toothpaste your children are using? I don't. Does anybody check that? I don't know. I'm being a little facetious here, but I just think our oversight for things are sometimes misplaced. One of these things about unconventional natural gas is that it's a game changer. It has driven the price of gas down. That's good for some industries that are going to switch. It's tough for some companies that are heavily weighted in the gas portfolio, like Quicksilver is one of them. But can really, really significantly change the way the world energy systems is played. I want to say world energy systems, not just North America. We have sort of a North American landlocked pipeline gridlock here. We can't really export our product yet. However, that's changing, and for the rest of the world, they're already doing it. So we have to there's a lot of things at play here. I'm going to get just use about hydraulic fracturing and water use. There's a lot of either or, kind of yes and no, on off. Stop fracking, and now we have clean water. I think there's got to be some other middle roads for us. And here's some quotes. Water is life's mater and matrix, mother and medium. There's no life without water. Well, that sounds quite a turn of phrasing. It's a Nobel Prize winner for medicine. Another quote is, civilization has been a permanent dialogue between human beings and water. And that's another one I really like, because it's very true. I mean, next to air, we need water. Air, a few minutes, we'll die. A couple of days without water, we'll die. So you can math log hierarchy. What's most important? What's next important? What's next important? And you can go down that. That's very interesting to you have to Google it. And here's one from one of the co-founders of Quicksilver, at least in Canada. People are mostly made up of water. Water is more important than oil and gas. And there's our logo. It says at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it, Quicksilver Resources company. I'm going to look at, clearly, water, we've got to have water. And it's a bit of a toughie when, I think, when for people to kind of say, well, you work for the oil and gas industry, and therefore you must not care about things. You must have a lower. You only care about money. Well, I don't think that's really fair. I don't think it's fair at all. And I think that I want to work for an ethical company that wants to take landowner concerns very seriously. And what are the main concerns? To go down, and we've heard of them, damage or contamination to water supplies. Well, that's one issue. They're both issues. Overuse of water. Well, that's related to it, but it's not exactly the same. Microseismic events or earthquakes, and risk assessment in a modern world. There's a quote here that says, we are all have fight or flight reactions to threats are hardwired in our DNA. And understanding comes a distant third if at all. Our brains, I think evolutionary biologists will tell you, is that our brains have been built, and we share DNA, we share some mental processes and attitudes and reactions with a lot of other animals. And right at the start of this is a fight or a flight. And it saved humanity's life in lots of cases. But in sometimes it pushes people into one area or the other. I'm so freaked out about this, is that I'm going to run from it or I'm going to fight it. And I can see it. I've been in those situations. And often in our world, fear trumps facts time and time again. I have an Uncle Dave. I just recently came back from BC. He's a great guy. He's 89 years old. He's been in many businesses. He's had a great business. He has a tight ship. I just love staying there. Smart guy, great place. But just this last few weeks, he said, so still working for the oil industry in Alberta? I said, no, it's oil and gas. I do work for a gas company. I would never have that in my house. He said, really? I thought your stove is natural gas. No, it's propane. And oh, okay, well, it's related to it. I guess you're, fine. And I think what he was referring to was the pipes into the house. And I had a very short pipe system. I went, well, okay. And I'm going to ask him why. He said, I saw one blow up once. And there's no way that I can ever have that in my house. And to keep his house warm, it's very efficient. He burns wood. There's lots around Courtney, Vancouver Island, chops it up. I know that the Penn Institute would say, geez, he's burning a lot of wood and he's burning propane. He'd probably be better for the environment if he didn't, if he switched to natural gas. However, not to put words in their mouths, when I talked to Dave, when I kept asking him why, it came to me. Fear. He's not ready to listen to reason and facts. I can show him, like the airline statistic. It's safe now, it's safe now. Millions of people use it. Your kids use it in Victoria, Vancouver. but he just can't get past that fear. And like I say, he's a great guy. I admire him. Wish I was more like him, but he just has that blind spot. And giving him a graph won't do it. I think I was talking about with one of my colleagues here, and he said that works for Quicksilver is, he probably just hang out with his kids and live in a natural gas house for a while. So I want to take these one at a time. I've drawn some arrows there. Because I believe the facts are this. But damage or contamination sure can happen. No question. You can mess up a lot of things. But I believe the oil and gas industry has the highest levels of regulation in the world. And I've seen, been privileged through my job at the ERCB to have, I took part in one time in their foreign visitation program and would talk with other jurisdictions from Europe, Russia, China. And they used to copy a bit about the ERCB and ask questions. And you get some interesting dialogues, but when you compare them, I know we're not perfect here in Alberta and BC, and certainly I think I had to smile at one of the speakers last night, said, well, the regulators haven't caught up, but at least here in Alberta, it's something, and in Wyoming, I forget what state it was, they get away with anything. I don't know if that's exactly the case, but certainly that's the perception. In fact, when you look at water, overuse of water, our water requirements are often far less than many other major industries. They really are. And then, the seismic events can happen. Yes, they're generally very minor. But the fracking process is safely occurring for years. Yet it's banned in Quebec. Why? Well, there might be some political reasons, but it's actually, I should say, there's a moratorium on it. It's not banned, so allow me that nuance. But there's a lot of, I think the current sitting premier is not on her watch, no way. And you hear people's signs. All the protest signs, and you've seen them all over. Don't frack with our water. No fracking. We value water more than profits. We value water more than natural gas. Get out. So it's sort of a binary, either or, off and on. In fact, speaking of Quebec, and I don't, just in terms of our frank conversation here, I think if anybody went to a country, some of you travel to different countries, and if you went to a country and you said, this particular hotel or place, it doesn't have microwave ovens. I want to heat my tea or coffee. I'm sorry, sir, you asked something. I'm sorry. Those microwave ovens are dangerous. They've blown up. They've hurt people. They've short-circuited. They've killed cats. Or I don't know. We need to study. And even though, your country has them and so on, we're not going to use them because we think we should study them more. I think you probably but okay, fine. To me, it's personal opinion. I want to make sure that I'm not speaking to Quicksilver sometimes. This is one of those times. To me, it seems that we already have the expansion down in Quebec as part of this country because they banned it. They're almost saying by inference, you guys don't care about water, you only care about profits, and it's so dangerous, you guys don't have a proper risk assessment. But, so we're going to ban it, we're going to study it some more. And I appreciate you need to study some things. Sometimes life is kind of what takes you. And so you just got to kind of be able to go with it. And at least assess it, put the rules on it, and say yes or no. But move from there. There's a sense that says the non-technical challenge in the industries are the biggest challenge for us. Because they are. It's not technical. It's stakeholder acceptance. There's again a quote. Here's a note about fears of the public. We're entitled to our own opinions, but not our own facts. Well, here's a fact from water use and resources, and you can see that the oil and gas industry is very, really small. You can even take out the yellow, because that's hydropower. I don't know if that actually is fair. But you can see that over time, that's a fact. Here's another fact. If you look at Quicksilver's developments again in the BC or the Horn River, Alberta, put those all with all the other oil and gas industries. So when you compare them to other industries by province, by country, I think you'll be kind of amazed at what you see. This is from BC, and it shows pulp and paper manufacturing, etc. There's some other examples there about we all need water, growing corn, making automobiles, golf courses. There's water use, and some of it's recycled, some of it's not. But it's something to be concerned about. Here's seismicity. This is from, I know you can't read some of this, but we have examples of induced seismicity, and both esteemed doctors talked about that. Here's a graph that talked about the frequency, and this is from one of the geological surveys. And you can see at the very top is the Japan earthquake. There was a recent earthquake in BC, it was about 7.7. But I live next to a train now, not really next to it, but close to it, and when it goes back and I'm standing, I can feel the ground shake. So is that train huge amount of energy causing a minor earthquake where I'm standing? Well, I think so.
So it does happen. There's a quote here, and it's from the National Academy of Sciences, and there's one on top of the other. The one on top says there's 35,000 hydraulic fractured wells in the U.S. One case. These are scientists, but certainly it's happened. We have to monitor. They propose a traffic light system where the success of protocols is about the public. Natural gas itself, whether it's, once it's refined, is very clean burning. In Alberta, it's what those words indicate. It's over 90% methane. It's dry and sweet. BC, our shale gas has a bit higher CO2 concentrations and some trace amounts of gas and H2S. Here's some natural gas developments. Path towards a cleaner environment. It is the cleanest burning of all fossil fuels. I drive my bike to Calgary or downtown, and I don't like driving downtown in Calgary in 9th Avenue. There's buses. There's too many diesel buses, and it's just, I think we should, fix those and switch those. It may not be the ultimate forever, next 100 years, perhaps, but maybe we can think of something better, but it's clearly better. Cleans up the airship, and it's a popular fuel. Here's some facts about shale gas. It's been safely used for over 60 years. And even though it's fracking itself, now somebody says, well, it's not the same. Fracking vertically and there, but you're like fracking on steroids now. Well, you're right. It is. We're being very, very successful at it. And it's certainly we need to monitor it. But it is a clean burning commercial coal. And it's a popular fuel. How popular? Well, there's some pictures of it. Quicksilver's going to have it with the trucks. Here's a nice garbage truck, pink green. I think it's a great transition fuel. And I said it was a game changer. We can last more than 100 years. And there's a lot of stats that says all this thing is clearly at full cost accounting, it's clean. And so what do I say? Here's some adjectives for natural gas. It's secure, safe, cleaner, and reliable. And years ago, I went on a lot of tours. There was a lot of AEUB concerns and right-wing fears. And I can draw some analogies, I think, about to the shale gas issues. And what I heard was a PowerPoint like this saying, deadly, scary, gonna kill you, run away. Well, I think my sense is that it's different. And there are some economics and benefits of natural gas development. It is significant, and I won't go on to them, but each province is mentioned there, and it does benefit Canada, including the province that's banned microwave. It's banned. Anyway, I'm going to give you some questions to consider. And let's just consider some questions. I'm going to wrap up really quickly. I want us to consider some routes on the road. I told you I ride my bike to work in the morning, and I search for routes. I need routes, especially in the winter.